I had to find like that middle ground as far as like how to actually communicate effectively with both my children actually. So, because at first my wife was like, I was too hard, and then I was like, okay, then she's like, well, now you're not being hard enough. So I'm like, all right, so it's finding that happy medium in that whole dynamic has been interesting for me. And just trying to be able to relay messages and life lessons to the kids in a way that they can understand it. Um, that that took a little bit of time to figure out because just because I say something in a way that I understand it doesn't mean that they're going to take it the way that I want them to. So that's why I had to learn. I always have to follow up with secondary questions to make sure that they get the message that I want them to get. And
Hmm.
and that's been one of the harder things that I had to do. But
I love you, Daddy.
This is For Fathers, a podcast for fathers to uplift and encourage each other with the understanding we are the forefathers of the next generation. I'm eloQuint, and today, man, we got a man of God, my man, Johnny Morant Jr. This is episode 105. Man, tell everybody what's up.
hey, how y'all doing, everybody? Peace and
Man, it is a
blessings.
pleasure. Yeah, man, it's a pleasure to have you up here. I really appreciate you hopping on, taking the time out today, man. It means a lot.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, man.
Of course, man. And just met you a couple months ago. I've been at Grace. We just had the pastor on last episode, and I'm glad we was chopping up at the food distribution. So I'm definitely looking forward to, man. You got a lot of good stuff going, and doing a lot of stuff with the church. So it's I can't wait for this convo.
Yep, thank you. Appreciate it. How
So
things been going for you this week, man?
man, everything's been good, bro. Everything's been good, man. I was talking to I don't know who I was talking to. I was talking to somebody at the job. He asked me the same thing. I said, "Look, man, I come home every day to my family because everybody knows, and I just got married. I just rented a house, and I got a garage now for the first time. I come home every day to my family. I coach. I come home, and I was telling how much I love the everyday process. I do the same thing every day. I wake up, read, pray, make my grits. I make grits thing there every morning, and then I go to school. I go to work. I drop my kid off. Like I love that. I know what I'm doing every day, and I love doing it, man. I'm just enthralled with this whole with the marriage life and just this family life. Man, I've been wanting this for a long time.
That's good, brother. Had that good peace of mind.
Oh yeah, it's so peaceful, man. So peaceful. What about you, man? What you had going on this week?
Nothing but work. um, so yeah, we were out of the office all last week because of the weather, and just had to go back this week and get acclimated. I may have picked up something from work. That's what I'm thinking when my voice sounds so crazy.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's crazy being out there. What you do for work again?
oh, IT. I've been doing cybersecurity for about uh, 20. Well, not it hadn't been 20 years. Well, actually, it has been 20 years. I've been doing cybersecurity for 20 years. I've been in IT since 1999, so been around the block for a while.
Man, I was 6 years old. That's wild. I didn't know you was
Yeah,
that much older than me, man. I guess
yeah,
your
man.
kids are what, high school now?
Yeah, both of them in high school, a senior and a freshman at
Oh yeah,
L.L.C.
you definitely got them years on me.
Yeah, yeah, yes, sir.
That's what's up, man. How is it like having high school kids, man? I'm a long way away. Oldest is 9 years old, so I ain't really trying to think about all them emotions and stuff. I got all girls. So What's the high school life, dad life like?
It's just different, you know. As the kids grow, the relationships change. They get weird at certain points when I guess it's like that middle school age when things get weird and they start developing more of their own stronger personalities and they start getting new friends and all this stuff, and then it's just like, all right, well, they start kicking the parents to the curb a little bit, you know. And then like now, my daughter's starting to come around a little bit more after going through that phase, I guess, because she's about to go to college and be off on her own a little bit. That dynamic is changing, but it's all good. And my son, he's a freshman, and we have a real cool relationship. So I love that.
Man, so I gotta ask, man, well, how does that feel as a dad? You know, your daughter going through those changes. She's probably, like you said, she stepped away a little bit from the not from the family, but you know what I mean? Like they want to be with their friends more. You know, at one point
Yeah.
she was under you the whole time. Now she stepped away. Like, how was that separation? How'd you handle that?
Um, I just I I didn't take it personal. You know, you understand that your kids are going to go through phases and they're going to have their own friends, their own lives, and you just have to give them a little bit of space and just know that you raised them and brought them up right, gave them an understanding of the Lord and how you expect things to be done, and just know that they'll come back around. You just have to have faith that they will.
Yeah, nah, I believe it because I was listening to this podcast. I think it was Jackie Hill Perry's husband, Preston. He
Mhm.
was talking about living with your kids is like living with unsaved people your whole life. Like you gotta, because they, you know, they haven't, you know, they don't really understand the gospel truly. So you know, you're living with unsaved people and you try and teach them. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. So I know I'm not looking forward to the separation, but like you said, you can't take it personal. And when I
Right.
was a young father, I took a lot of stuff personal, like when they would cry and want their mommy instead of me. I'm like, dang, I'm right here. You know, I want you. I had a little different situation because you know we
Yeah.
was in separate houses and stuff like that. But I definitely heard it. It took me a while to get over that. I had to mature as a father, but it was a struggle. It was a struggle.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's easy, but you just have to understand what it is. And when you're going through it, you'll stop sometimes and think to yourself like, man, I'm like you'll start feeling like, what did I do to deserve this? And things like that. But then you just have to realize that they're young kids. We were kids at one point. Then you have to reflect on how you were when you were that age and how you acted sometimes and how like when you got a little bit older. Like me, my relationship with my parents got much better after I left the house, and I had more an appreciation of everything that they went through, and having to pay my own bills and everything. I was like, okay, I get
What?
it now.
I
It changes everything, and it makes you come back home with some real appreciation for your parents and everything that they did for you.
Right. Now I understand why they keep fussing at me to turn the light off because we can get that light bill. It's like, man, why all these lights on? I be coming home. Why all these lights on? You don't need a light. You're not even over there. You don't need to turn the
Right,
light on to walk from here to here. You can see. You're right.
right. Because I'll go in rooms and turn off lights behind people, and they looking at me like, I'm like, yeah, turn this light off.
My parents, when I got older, my parents used to threaten me like, you know, you got that job. You gonna start paying these bills. You don't turn these lights off. So you know that put the fire in me real quick.
Yeah, but yeah, one thing that I would encourage you to do, once your girls get of age where they can understand money a little bit, and or if they get to go through a phase where they feel like you have to do something for them, start showing them the bills and how much things actually cost in this world to give them a little bit of perspective, and then ask them about their job and how much money they're bringing in, and when they say nothing, they're like, okay, well, you are contributing to what's going on in this household. And like
I love
me
it.
and
Is that your
me
process? Is that what you did?
yeah, like me and your mom taking care of all this stuff, so yeah, just sit back and relax. But now, like now my daughter has a little job or whatever at Chick-fil-A, and she, but she still has a clear understanding that the only thing she's really doing is getting a couple of things that she wants. We take care of her needs. So
So what brought you that to that place that you had to show her the bill, and was it something she was doing, like was it she wasn't appreciative? Did you do it
yeah,
both or just her?
no, I did it with both of them, but it was more so her just feeling entitled,
Mm.
feeling like we had to do something, and like yeah, I understand I'm your parent, and there are certain things that I have to do, but don't take it for granted that I will do it just because I have to
Right,
do
right.
you know, I mean, so it's a lot of things a lot of changes that these kids put you through, man. And sometimes you just have to show them what the reality is, and like, look, this is how much the mortgage is. This is how much electricity is. This is how much the water is, and this is how much this internet bill is. Like none of this stuff is free, and once they get a real concept of that, and then you're like, all right, now add this up. We roughly pay this every month. And then when they start actually writing those numbers down and seeing it, it 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 clicks. They're like, oh,
Hmm.
okay, all right. And then yeah, I'm starting having those. Well, not starting, but having conversations with my daughter about going to school and getting scholarships and making sure you got all your paperwork right. And it's a lot. And
Oh, I
making
believe it.
yeah, trying to make sure she stays on top of her grades because she's had really good grades up until this point, and now she's starting to have a little bit of trouble in one of her classes. And I'm like, look, I came too far to be slipping now, so
Hmm.
got to get it together because this stuff, colleges look at this stuff like when they they try to figure out what happened. So they'll see that your grades were good up until your last year. So like, did she get lazy or what's going on? What's the real? Is she
Hmm.
having problems at home? Problems at school? What's the issue? And they take all that stuff into consideration. And then with the political atmosphere, you have potentially cuts going into federal funding for um, colleges and for loans and things like that. So I'm like, look, little girl, you got to stay on top of it because.
You know what's happening next.
Yeah, I'm like, me and your mom are doing all right, but we can't afford to send you to a 4-year college just on what we're making. So I'm like, that's what it is. So,
So how different is the conversations between your daughter and your son? I know there's like a 3-year gap, I guess, a 4-year maybe gap.
yes, yes,
I know, like I said, I only have daughters. I don't have a son. Is it just how their personalities are kind of the same, or do you find yourself having different conversations? You have to change your voice depending on who you're talking to, because we know having multiple kids that each kid responds differently and they have a whole different makeup. So how is that for you?
yeah. So I'm more direct with my son because he doesn't like take take offense or get emotional about too much. So it's just like it's almost like talking to myself sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, he
It,
seemed real laid back like you.
Yeah, it may take a little while for him to understand what I'm saying or comprehend where I'm coming from, but a lot of times he'll get it, and if he doesn't understand, he'll ask questions. Whereas like with my daughter, it's like sometimes she'll listen, and then sometimes, well, actually, she always listens, but the thing is, she'll have an attitude, and that's the real difference between the two of them, as far as listening and having conversations with them. My son will just sit there and listen. I'm like, okay. And oftentimes I will have to repeat myself with him because sometimes he'll say okay, and I'll know he's not
Right.
listening. So, yeah, but my daughter, she's always listening, but I have to follow up with her just to see how she actually interprets what I say. Because
Mm.
sometimes she'll take something I say totally out of context, and I'm
Ooh.
like, and I'll be like, where'd you get that from? It's like that's not what I. It's like that's not what I said. So I'm like, let me try saying it a different way so that you can understand. So there's that dynamic with her. Um, but yeah, like I said with my son, it's just basically just make sure he's actually listening because
Mm-hmm.
most of the times he'll get it, and then sometimes he'll be staring at me and shaking his head like yeah yeah, and then I'll be like, what did I say?
Can't even tell you.
Right, right. So if
So with you being laid back, was it because you just you mentioned like the emotional part, of raising daughters. Was it easy for you to tap into your emotions? Like, well, have you always been good with your emotions? Like, was it easy for you to go there with her so that I know sometimes it can get frustrating. Like when well, you have a wife, so I did not say that. Like, why? How, what you talking about? What? So like, so even that, or just even being able to convey yourself in a way that's trying to uplift them, but also trying to direct them or direct her. So though, is it easy for you to to do that? Or, like, was your wife training or anything like that?
well, so my wife is actually more strict on her than I am, and I had to find like that middle ground as far as like how to actually communicate effectively with both my children actually. So because at first my wife was like I was too hard, and then I was like, okay, then she's like, well, now you're not being hard enough. So I'm like, all right. So it's finding that happy medium in that whole dynamic has been interesting for me. And just trying to be able to relay messages and life lessons to the kids in a way that they can understand it. Um, that that took a little bit of time to figure out because just because I say something in a way that I understand it doesn't mean that they're going to take it the way that I want them to. So that's why I had to learn. I always have to follow up with secondary questions to make sure that they get the message that I want them to get. And
Hmm.
and that's been one of the harder things that I had to do. But um, I'm really patient, so and it 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 didn't bother me. It was just learning to do it
Hmm.
and and figuring out that okay, maybe I'm not as good a communicator as I think I am. So I need to figure out
Right.
a better way to relay the message.
Yeah, I get that, and that's kind of comforting for me because I have a blended family, and that's one of my biggest struggles right now. Learning how to not be too hard because I can be pretty strict, coach background and
Hmm.
just my go get it personality, right? And then just
Hmm.
really and sometimes learn how to be a little bit softer but still being firm. So that's comforting to me that even that you have everybody in the same house and everybody's from the same loins and you still have that. So that's comforting. I look forward to just really learning how to be a father and an effective father, an encouraging father, all that. So,
Yeah, you just have to pay attention to how to respond um, in different situations. So, like when you're being a disciplinarian, you have to see what works because every disciplinary you can't use the same disciplinarian style with all your children because they
hmm.
respond differently, and some people need more strict strict discipline, and the other kid might not.
Yeah,
Some kids you can just talk to them and they're like, all right, I got it. And then
right.
others, hey, others you might have to break out the belt.
So, if that was your case, how did you do that without making one feel like they're being picked on, if you will? You know what I mean? Like one, like it seemed like an unfair situation. Like, if was that your case? Like you had to figure that had that balance too.
No, that really wasn't the case as far as like them not understanding the why they got the consequences they got. Um, because between me and my wife, they get a thorough talking to. regardless of what the situation is. If they've done something and deserve stricter punishment, that's what they get. And one thing that we do is we tell both of them why this is happening to them and to the other one. So it's not like there are any surprises or like, so if you do something and then you come back and do something later, you're going to get the same punishment for doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do something different, then it's different consequences for different actions. But we always let both of them know what the other one is doing, why they got in trouble, and what the consequences were. So that's how we've been doing it, and it's been pretty effective. So,
That's good. Was it the ages? Like, especially when they were younger, more not now, but when they were younger, did you like have not more severe, but I guess more of an expectation for the older in terms of younger? Like, at the end of that, like change at a certain age?
yeah, I always had more expectations for my daughter because she is 3.5 years older than him. So it was more like we need you to be a good example and a good role model for your brother. And initially, and for a while, it was actually tough for her because she was the only kid for a little
Mm-hmm.
while, and then
Mm-hmm.
having to split that time with a new baby and all this other stuff, going through all those transitions and stuff. But the relationship they have is matured and grown, and it's a real loving relationship between them. Now they're just two peas in the pod and joking all the time and
Yeah,
getting
I
on
be
each
seeing
other's nerves.
that.
But it's all good, man. It's all good.
Now I got to pick your brain a little bit because I agree with that. I believe in that as well. But the argument can be made that can, I guess, be kind of detrimental. And you have that more of an expectation instead of keeping things fair across the board. Um, like that's just the argument that's been made. Like, what you think about that?
Well, I mean, it's degrees to everything. So being the older kid, you go through everything first. So you get to see everything from a different perspective first as being that older child, and you go through things and you mature before the other kid. So you literally go through everything first. And if the expectations on you get to you first because of that, so you get to see everything from a perspective of being that first child and having to endure a lot more than the younger child may have to simply because we're still learning. We're on the job learning too, you know? This
On a
whole
job learning, I like that.
yeah, yeah. You don't come come into this world knowing how to be a parent. I mean, you can reflect back on things you learned from your own parents and things that you went through. But I mean, everything that applied back then doesn't apply now. So yeah, they just being the first child, you get to get more of that experience, whether it's whether it's fair or not, coming from us. And then sometimes as parents, we learn how to adapt and do things differently. And sometimes we may not have like the same type of um, thing going for the younger child, but you also have to know how to be fair about it and implementing what you're doing because the older child will also remember what you did to them. So
Right.
so
Yeah.
that they'll be like, well, when I was that age, you
Yeah.
did this to me. I'm like, yeah,
That's
you're
my
right.
sister all day.
Yep.
My sister the oldest, and she brings up all the time. Y'all gotta do stuff I ain't get to do. Da 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 da. Man,
Yep.
I definitely agree, man. But I, with the situation I'm in, I'm realizing I'm having to adapt my mindset because things are different. You're bringing in somebody else from a totally different household and grafting them in essentially. Somebody that's been only child for 5 years, and then now having to share with with 3 other sisters and stuff like that. So I really having to reshape my mind. But it's interesting to hear from your perspective, and I'm still learning and figuring it out. It's exciting, but sometimes like you said, it's on the job training. And sometimes I feel like I just be about to get a pink slip soon. Like, hey, you got, hey, you got to shape up, man. That's just warning number one. It's not going to your record, but
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing it all in love and making sure that they understand where you're coming from when you're doing certain things, and they'll appreciate it whether it's now or later. They'll eventually appreciate it. So that's just be comforted in that, man.
yeah, that is the goal. But I do want to change gears a little bit because you had mentioned and talked about like the loan situation, and I know, man, you do something real unique with the church, diving into I guess political realm and then grafting in the gospel as well. So, man, share with everybody what you do.
Okay, well, at the church, I started a new book club, and it was basically it came out of some meetings that we had with another church, another local church, a predominantly white church that was in the area, and it was it all started up around the whole George Floyd incident and talking about different ways that the churches can relate to each other, how we can support each other, and do different things during these political times to try to create better relationships and strengthen relationships between um, two God-fearing organizations. Even though one's predominantly white church and we're a predominantly black church, we're still children of God, so we should be able to come together and just have simple conversations about real life things that are going on and how they get addressed. Um, so we had meetings once a month um, for about 2 years, and we were talking about different situations that were going on in the world. Politics came in, and we just had a real good conversation about everything that's going on politically, locally, nationally, and all those types of things. And recently, well, I shouldn't say recently, it was beginning of last year. I started a book club at the church to basically teach more about um, Black history and politics and the impact that our history has had on us politically and financially. Um, and I got a lot of this information that I'm sharing with the church from this group called ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery. They have a foundation, adosfoundation.org, and it came from the brainchild of Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore, and they basically started pointing out the what's currently known as the wealth gap that we have in America, and it's basically the wealth gap between white Americans and Black Americans. So in America, white Americans basically have $127 trillion in worth, excuse me, in wealth, and Black Americans have about 6.39 trillion in wealth. So white Americans, basically equates to 80, white Americans basically have 80% of the nation's wealth, and Black Americans have about 4% of the nation's wealth, while being 14% of the population. So if all things were equitable, then we would actually have 14% of the nation's wealth, and everything would be a little bit more fair. But the consequences of that wealth gap is one of the things you see now with inflation that's going on, how um, you'll see more black people struggling because of that wealth gap, because white people, they have a lot of them have inheritances, whereas we inherit debt a lot of times. So like when their parents died, they'll have insurance policies, businesses, stock portfolios and things like that that get passed down to them. Well, a lot of times if our parents die, we have to pay for the funeral. and we may
Yeah.
not have anything passed down to us at all. So there's the big the racial wealth gap, and that's caused through things from slavery, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, and looking at it from that perspective of all these things that have added up over the years, and how the black community in America basically wasn't able to start building wealth until after the civil rights era, which was like the late 1960s,
Mm-hmm.
while white Americans have been building wealth since they've been in this country, since the early, well, the mid 1600s. So it's a big head
It's a
start,
300,
and
300-year gap, right?
right, right, and too many black people think that we can just catch up just like that. And I'm like, well, if they've had a head start all this long time, it's almost impossible to catch up. And they've actually done studies saying that the only way black people could catch up to the wealth that white people have now would be if white people literally just stopped working, and we kept working for 250 years, and then we'd be able to catch up. Or the
Right.
alternative, would be reparations, which would be used to close the racial wealth gap. And reparations would come from the federal government. So we've been in the book club. We've been talking about all these topics, and basically how the laws have been used um, to hold Black Americans back, and dispel a lot of myths around affirmative action, DI, woke, and all this other stuff, and how a lot of these things get misused and misinterpreted, and basically how a lot of these systems that were developed developed in the past were initially specifically for white people, especially a lot of the programs that came out of the New Deal, um, from Roosevelt. So when those programs were implemented, they were implemented, and black people were excluded. They excluded what they call farm labor and people who were wash workers or people that worked in the house. So those people were excluded during that time frame, and that's what the majority of our people were. So all the benefits um, went to white Americans.
Yeah. And that's crazy. It, I mean, I would even argue though that it's not even about catching up. It's just about building our own. Like, why we focus on catching up and it's just build and do better than we doing now. I feel like that's even a even better uh a focus point.
I didn't hear what one of those words you said was. You said cashing out. What do you say? I'm sorry.
It's not. I said not about catching up. Like
Oh, catching up. Okay.
why focus on catching up? Why is not focus on just being the best that we are and with the knowledge that we have and just worry about us and just continue to do better than what our forefathers did. I mean, I feel like that's a better focus point.
Yeah. So we can focus on that, and I think that's what we've been doing since the 1970s. But what you find out is that the wealth gap is so vast, and the issue that it causes is that, like, let's just say that your four girls, it's time for them to go to college. You've been saving up, and now it's time for them to go. Right now, the average cost for college is roughly 30 grand a
Sheesh.
semester. So, and that's now, and that's overall, and that's rapidly changing. So, four girls, 30 grand a year for 4 years.
They gotta get scholarships, bro.
Right. But if you got an inheritance coming in from your parents, they can they can pay for that.
Right.
So let me give you another example. So it was a young lady I used to work with at First Citizens, and her husband um, got a used house in Raleigh, pretty big house, and they had to get all the windows replaced, 25 windows. She and she said what they do is whenever they have a birthday, Christmas, or any other major gift giving holiday like that, they'll just go ask one of their parents to make upgrades to their house. So one time it was getting all the windows replaced. Another time it was getting a whole bunch of trees removed out of their yard. Tree removals can start anywhere from $900 on up. And I think she said they had like 16 trees they had removed from their yard. Um, she was saying how her grandmother sent all of the grandchildren to school through college, pay for all the grandchildren to go to college.
Wow.
And, because her grandmother owned 10 properties in Texas and was renting them all out
Mm,
since she was young. So she had enough money to send all of her grandkids to college.
that's
And
straight profit right there.
yep, and every year they would go somewhere like all expense paid trip by the grandmother. So it's things like that, and it's like, all right, so yes, we have because literally we don't have a choice but to try to do better than the previous generation because the cost of
Hmm.
living is skyrocketing so much. But when you have that type of insurance blanket coming from the previous generations to help you in these different situations, so they can be working at the same job as we are, but then they have an inheritance coming in too. So you you have all this extra income. So if something, even if they lose their job, they're still okay. You
Right.
know, we lose our job, it's some trouble about to happen. It's gonna have to be some moving and shaking and get some things going.
Hey,
You know,
grinding and
yeah.
prayer.
So it causes problem, especially when you start looking at the in recent years the price of gas, the price of food, everything's going up, and
Jeez, eggs
and
is
and
crazy.
in the in our in, right eggs, milk, you know, but our rate of income isn't keeping up with the rate of inflation.
Hmm.
So, and I know it's a lot of propaganda out there, especially from the news um, and different people on the internet, as far as like, well, I'll start with the radio station. Kathy Hughes, Radio One. You always hear the commercial talking about black people have 2 point something trillion dollars in spending power. And I'm like, okay, what other group do you measure their wealth by how much they can spend?
Right. Right.
Um, so black people don't have $2 trillion in spending power. We only have 6.39 trillion altogether. So that includes housing, investments, um, what's the other thing? Housing, investment, consumer durable goods. Um, I can name it all off in a second. I'm gonna have to pull it up on this other screen right quick. So excuse me. So that includes real estate, consumer durable goods, corporate equities, benefits from pensions, um, businesses, and other assets. So when you start looking at this stuff and realizing this is something that's horribly wrong for for us to be this far behind, and then once you start looking at the laws that were put in place to hold our families back for this long, and then to just assume that we can actually be able to survive is is troubling. So you also have to look at the amount of homelessness that we have in the Black community as well. We have almost a 50% homeless rate in this
Dang,
country
really?
for Black Americans. Yep. So
Really?
the the numbers the numbers are staggering once you actually look at them and, and find out what they are. And you also have to look at the incarceration rate of our people as well, and why we have such high incarceration rates. Because a lot of times we want to just look at each other and just say that, oh, that person messed up or blah blah blah. But you have to look at the long term consequences of what's been happening in our communities, because a lot of times you come out of poor communities and come out of poverty, and when when you're in that environment for so long, it only takes one mistake and you get locked up. And then, like, for us, you're 7 times more likely to get prosecuted for what we do than if a white person that committed the same crime.
Mm-hmm.
So those are odds aren't good for for us, and the judicial system also sentences us more harshly than they do our white counterparts. So um, it's, you basically can't make any mistakes, you know.
Right.
So
It's staggering.
right,
And so and like so it's obviously you got all this knowledge, man. It's obviously been in it, you've been studying it, been reading it, man. So was it the meeting with the church that started you off? Was you always in this? Was it your idea? Like how'd you even get going? Because this is a rabbit hole. Like anybody knows that
yeah.
you get stuck in a rabbit hole when you know all this
Mhm.
stuff. You just get fixed with it. So how'd you even get started?
No, what got me really started it was actually my first job out of college.
Oh, so it's been a while.
Well, that's what piqued my interest, but that didn't actually get me into it. So,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't really understand it at the time. So, I was working at IBM, and there was another guy, Ryan, white guy. He was working there, and come in, both of us knew. So we were basically roughly making around the same thing because we had the same job. And I'm living in my apartment, got my little car, thinking I'm doing all right, And then he invited a whole bunch of us from work over to his house. So his house is on Lake Norman. It's a, a 3-story house because he drove a BMW, but he also had this nice Harley Davidson motorcycle, and he had like the Sea-Doo jet ski things underneath
He was
the
living
little
life, wasn't he?
yeah, the little thing. I forgot what the thing is called, but it's like the outdoor garage that lead right to the water. But
Uh-huh.
he had that right there on the lake. And I'm like, what in the world going on? Yeah. I'm like, how in the world he can afford all this? And I'm like, 'cause we making the same thing, and then one of my other coworkers, she was like, yeah, his family got that old money, you know? And that was something that just stuck with me, even though I didn't really understand it or delve too much into it. I was like, okay, then I was like, okay, so his parents got money. Okay.
Mhm.
And
Right, that's
I just brushed it off
yeah.
as that, his
Right,
parents
right.
got money. But then but then I started thinking to myself, I'm like, well, my parents work, you know, they can't do this for me, you know?
Mhm.
And then just living and talking to more people and seeing more things, you start noticing it's like, okay, something is wrong. And you realize that the problem is we're strictly living off of income and they aren't. And once you come to that understanding that surviving in America on income is getting to be um, close to impossible. Because like the median um, the median wealth in Wake County, the median household wealth in Wake County is $103,000, and that's spread out across the county. So of course, in certain areas it's more, in other portions it's less. So like on the the western part of, I think it's the western part of Wake County, you got some places where the median family income is like 250.
Mm,
So so that means like on the eastern side is much lower than what the overall is. But then like the city of Raleigh, um, when the Office of Management and Budget are working with developers, they use these numbers to determine how much houses should be in the area and how much the taxes should be in the area. So if you got one side that's worth 250 and you got another side that's worth 45 and you got houses that's worth 300, because of the median wealth. So it creates inequalities like that. And
mm,
and that's why you need like more black people to be involved politically to get their voices heard, because if you don't, somebody's going to make a decision for you and it's not going
right,
to be in your best interest. And that's what a lot of black people don't understand, especially black people that don't get involved in politics, because they don't see all this stuff that goes on behind the scenes to understand what's going on. And like those calculations that they make, like I said, it's not based on your community or how you feel. They 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 determine it based on the whole area instead of just a small pocket of, okay, these people that live in this area make this much, so the houses in this area should be this much. No, it's based on the bigger area or the city
mm,
or the county, and they're like, all right, so this is what the housing price is going to be, and that's how a lot of people get priced out. Um,
mm. So do
but
you get a chance to go to like those meetings? I know like sometimes you can like normal, well not normal, like everyday people can go to those kind of like I don't know exactly what they're called, like the council meetings or the board. I don't
yeah,
know exactly what the word is. I think you invited us to one at one point. But do
yes,
you get a chance to go out there?
yeah. Sometimes I get a chance to go out to the city council meetings,
Yeah.
and there are other meetings that they have. But like I just recently just went to a OMB meeting that they had at the local community center. So they were having some at community centers all throughout the city, and they were just giving out basic information about how the city budget is spent and how it's made, and they were just asking for community input. So things like that. It's good to be involved, to understand what's going on, know where your taxes are being spent, where it's going to,
Mhm.
and what impact you can actually have on what's going on locally in your community.
Right. And exposure too, exposing yourself to that knowledge.
Yep,
So that's always good too. And then you can pass it down to your kids. That's another thing that's passed down is information,
yep,
knowledge, the power, the power to get wealth. I think there's even a book or something. I don't know, but
yep.
is it? I think I heard of something like that before. Power to get wealth. I don't know, but so I definitely agree. I definitely um loved the fact that you do that, man. Have you figured out a way to infuse like the gospel into all this? I know it seems like this is like I don't want to call it your side job, but just it's like just something that you're really passionate about. Have you really figured out a way to infuse the gospel into all this?
S- So that's one of the things I actually try not to do as far as like with politics, because the reason why is because you have a lot of people from a lot of different spiritual backgrounds that are involved in politics, and you don't know what's going to offend somebody. And unfortunately, how politics works, you offend the wrong person, you in some big trouble, because they're the ones who are able to make decisions that can control how things happen in your neighborhood. They can control your tax rate. So it's a lot of power that goes on with with politics and power and influence, and you have to balance balance the needs that you have versus how you how you may feel about someone politically, their religion or spirituality. So the way I go into it is I try to I'll go into it looking at everybody as equals and hope that you're coming into the situation with the best intentions. And then when I find out you aren't, then we can go from there.
Right.
Um,
Could
I
it
can
be?
only
Could it
I
be?
can control what I do
Hmm.
and my temperament and my response on how I do things, but I can't control what other people do. But I want to be able to influence them to do what I need them to do for the betterment of our community.
Yeah, I definitely get that. But could it be possible? That God plants you this seed in you so that you can bring it, so that just and that could be an impact as well. Like, yeah, have you ever even thought about that? Like, is that a possibility that he using you to make a difference,
Mhm.
and make an impact in that way as well?
Yeah, so when it comes time to build relationships, yeah, I'll implement it and bring it in, and if if they're accepting of it, we can move forward in our relationship in that type of way. But if they're not receptive of it, I have to make adjustments because I don't want things to go negatively um, from a political perspective. Um, and that's why they supposedly have the quote unquote separation of church and state because everybody's interpretation of um, spirituality isn't the same. And if you even look at Christianity, you have like
a hundred
sev-
thousand.
yeah, versions of Christianity, and the same thing with Islam. You have all these different versions of Islam, and with all these different religions, is their branches and interpretations and misinterpretations
Mhm.
of of the Word of God. So, um, yeah, that's why I tend to try to keep it separate. But if not, I can still have a middle ground and meet you where you are. And I don't have any problems doing that politically or spiritually. So,
I get that. So there's this term I just learned about. So don't jump down throw. Apparently, it's a sensitive term. So I guess you're not a fan of it's something called Christian nationalism. I don't know. I just heard about it. It's something you probably know. I have no idea what it is. I heard somebody talking about it, and I kind of like I Google searched it. So I was like, uh, and they said that's like a lot to do with slavery or something. That's how I don't know. So that's not something. Is that something you're familiar with?
yeah, and basically it's just a right or a term for a right wing version of Christianity that's infused into politics. So a lot of times you'll have like the some people that are in the Republican Party that use Christianity to try to influence other people to get them to do what they want them to do politically.
Mm,
And if you start looking at what some of the things that they want to do, you have to question, like, is this the godly thing to do? Would would God want you to do these things knowing that it's going to harm other people? And you have to look at it like, where do you really stand
mm.
on your faith, and then what are you putting in the forefront, your politics or your faith? And you'll see that they're putting their politics first, and they're using um, their spirituality as the weapon to push forward their political agenda. So that's where it becomes dangerous and like
So it
so
sounds
if
like a lot of compromise.
um nah, it ain't, it's not even really a compromise. It's
No, I
manipulation.
mean like they're compromising their faith for
Oh yeah,
politics.
yeah, 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 yeah. Oh yeah. And I wouldn't even know. And it's even hard to say that because it's more like they're weaponizing their faith. for the politics.
So, what's your plan to stray away from compromising? Because I know politics, like you said, can get dirty. So, how you like? What is your plan to stray away to not compromise your faith, and still be an impact politically?
So it's basically you just have to have a political agenda that's in the best interest of the people. Once you start looking at what's in the best interest of the people and not in the best interest of yourself, it makes it a little bit easier. And if you're not delving into any type of racist or harmful ideologies, then it makes it much easier to stay on the straight and narrow and do what's right for the people. When So you have to have a love and respect for people when you're doing politics. It can't be about yourself. Once you
Mm,
start making it about yourself and being selfish, then you'll be susceptible to doing whatever for the highest bidder. Whoever comes in like, all right, I'll give you this amount of money to do this. And then you get paid, but it has a negative or detrimental impact on the community. And
mm,
then, you know, it's it's just you have to have something in you where you say, all right, this is what I'm going to stand on.
It's got to
I,
stand firm.
you have to, because if not, you'll be out here in the wind, and the devil will be on your back.
Oh, what? Knocking at your door.
hmm Yep.
So, do
So
you
yeah,
plan on running for anything? Do you want to like run for some type of political office position?
yeah. I was thinking once the kids get out of school, well, get out of high school, looking at running for city council, because I think I can have an impact at the local level, trying to get some things done, and hopefully try to bring down the cost of living in this city.
Yeah, yeah, it's getting up there, boy. I tell you, I was looking, man. I was like, man, it's crazy rent prices about because I know everything else is high.
hmm And that was just like something that just happened over like the past 5 years.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Because
that's how long
I
I've been
don't.
written almost.
Yeah, yeah. How familiar are you with downtown Raleigh?
Like in terms of what, like
O-
I've been down
Over
there plenty of
o-
times, but
over the past 10 years, I'd say 10 years.
oh, uh, I really didn't. I used to go out and stuff back in the day, so I probably did that to about 2018, and then now I do Lyft, so I'll be down there a lot, but I'm not like familiar with anything going on down there.
No, yeah, I'm just talking about how the dynamics of the city has changed as far as like the neighborhoods downtown because it
Oh,
used
I
to
know.
be
Yeah, I know
majority
people got
black.
pushed out. Yeah, people got
Yeah,
pushed out. Yeah, I know all about that. Uh-huh.
yeah. So
A lot of new
yeah,
stuff getting built up, real nice stuff. I know a lot of people got pushed out. A lot of people
yeah.
complain about that. I mean, that was happening in Charleston too when I was in college. They
hmm
was doing all that kind of stuff. What gentrification, right?
Gentrification. Yep.
Yeah.
They call gentrification the most beautiful form of ethnocide there is because they bring in everything that's looking real nice, but then they forcing the people that's currently there out because they can't afford to live there anymore because they're
Mm.
raising the prices and they're raising taxes. Because like from one of my personal experiences with my house, been in my house for about 17 years,
Oh,
and probably for the first 12, 13 years, my house was valued $20,000 less than what I paid was paying for it.
wow.
Now, in the last 5 years, my house value has doubled, so my taxes have gone up a whole lot because of that. So it's things like that, and like if let's just say I was retired and on a fixed income, and that was to happen to me. Now I might not be able to afford to stay in my own house because my
Mm.
taxes went up so high, and that's what happened to a lot of people downtown, especially
Oh,
because a lot of the older people that were downtown, their property values were depressed. They're around like $60,000, and then like if somebody comes in, and this was happening, they would buy the neighbor's house and build one of those three-story houses right next to it, So you have a $500,000 house right next to yours, and it's driving the property values up. And a lot of times it was older black people staying downtown. So once that property value go up, they don't have a choice but to sell because they can't afford the property taxes anymore. So you basically get forced out of your own home, and that's what's been going on all across the country. That's what gentrification is. And a lot of times you'll hear black people saying they want to move. I'm like, nah, a lot of times you get forced to move. And,
Mm.
and then like in Raleigh, it's like, where you gonna move to? Because now everything around Raleigh is expensive as well. So
Yeah,
you have
everything.
to move to another county
Hmm.
and hope it's cheaper in the next county. You
Right.
know.
Everything's getting built up in Wake in the Raleigh Wake County area. Everything, all the small cities, the Rosevilles and all that kind of stuff is popping now.
Yep. Just have a huge population boom that's going on. A lot of people moving here from different places. A lot of people moving from bigger cities, where some of them coming from New York and California, where they sold
Yeah.
these multi-million-dollar houses, so they can afford these houses. It's like these houses are cheap for them. You know.
Hmm. Yeah, that's where we came from. I came from New York a while ago, back in '01. So I know all about it. I get out that cold. It's too cold up there. You gotta get out that cold.
I'm about to say it's cold enough here for me. Shoot.
Oh yeah, I mean, shoot, there's nothing compared. I'm from upstate New York by Canada, so that ain't talking about
Oh
cold.
wow.
It's a
Yeah.
cakewalk. I still don't like it, but it's just a cakewalk.
Yeah.
And so,
No.
but it seems like I guess like wealth kind of is like more the main focus for you.
Mhm.
So what is your advice, I guess, to us and just the people that are dealing with these struggles, and to like how to accumulate, like what do you think they should do going forward to set the plan in motion for to set up generations, because it seems like everything about you is generational. You want to set up the
Yeah.
next generation. So what plan do you advise for people?
So a lot of people like to talk about generational wealth and things that you can do to build generational wealth. Well, to build generational wealth, you have to have generational money, and to be able to start start off with that, I mean, you have to do what you can do. Basically, when you're working, if your job has a 401k or a pension, you have to invest in your 401k and your pension. If they have a match, do whatever the match is up to 100% of what they're matching. Um, if you can afford to get some type of insurance policy um, that can cover, basically, like if you were to pass, it'll be able to cover whatever your mortgage is, or whatever whatever other expenses that you have. That way your family is taken care of, and if you can afford more, then you can do more that way. If you if you know how to invest in different things. But one of the main things that we also have to do, including doing all these other things, is get involved politically. Because if you don't get involved politically, you can still get taxed out of everything that you that you earn, because
Right.
somebody else is controlling the levers of politics, so they can tax you more. They can raise your property taxes. They can determine how much you get taxed on taxed on all your goods. Whenever you go shopping or anything, they determine the sales tax, the gas tax. If you want to start a small business, they determine what the taxes are on small businesses. So I mean, at some level, everybody needs to get more involved in their local politics, and try to have some influence at that level to make sure things are taken care of in your neighborhood. Because, like I said, if you aren't making a decision, somebody else is going to make the decision for you, and
Hmm.
it might not be what you want or what you need, because nobody can tell anybody else what you need for you better than you can. So
Amen.
we have to be advocates for ourselves in every aspect. Just like we have to advocate for ourselves at the job, we got to do the same thing in politics. It's just that simple.
Man, that's real. That's real. Man, you came up here with nothing but knowledge. Man, like I said, I could tell that you study. You make sure you know. I really pray, I really hope you make a lasting impact. I hope you get that city council, maybe even more, maybe be a mayor one day or something like that. I don't know, a governor. May you move up,
Yep,
man. Make ways, man. Make ways for us.
yep. I'm gonna try to, man. But the main thing is, I just got to be the way I learned how to talk to and craft a message for my children in a way that they can understand it. I have to figure out a way to do that so people, regular people, adults can understand where I'm coming from as well. Because eh, relaying a message, this message of wealth inequality, and also making it being a hopeful message as well, to understand that, look, this is what's been done, but it can be corrected. But it doesn't necessarily have to be uh, a strain on you or your family or whatever. Because a lot of people think that if I'm getting something extra, then it must be coming from something that they have. You know what I'm saying? And when you look at how tax dollars are moved around in the state and city, a lot of times for like schools and things, it depends on your area code, excuse me, your zip code. Your zip code determines what type of funding that you're getting in is based on the taxes in that zip code. So if you live in a zip code with people with a lot of money, you have better services in that area, better schools, you know. So instead of it being spread out more equitably across the whole area, which it should be, in that then you have a better environment all around. You wouldn't have pockets of certain parts that's just bad, you know, or considered to be bad because black people live in that area or whatever. So it's a happy medium that can be found, but people just have to stop being so selfish. That's
Yeah. Well, that flesh
that's
is real. That flesh is real, man.
hmm
That negativity, the enemy,
yep,
he real,
yep.
man.
Because
It's gonna
everybody,
be hard.
yep, everybody likes to talk about how hard they work. I'm like, yeah, I work hard too. I pay taxes too. You know, like I said, my tax dollars may not go to everything that's beneficial to my neighborhood. It's going over to help something in your neighborhood, you know? So it's like, I know life isn't fair, but we have to be able to do our best to try to make it as fair as possible. Because if you start leaving more and more people behind, it just creates more problems. And that's what people need to to understand. If you leave people too far behind, you're going to start causing more problems than you bargained for. Because once people get desperate, you don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, you ain't never lied. You
Des-
ain't never lied.
desperation is one mean motivator.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah. Hey man, so do you do anything, like do you like have YouTube videos that people can find you at and they can learn more about it, or you just do the book club?
yeah, I just do the book club. But there are several people I listen to online. Yvette Carnell, she has a YouTube show called Breaking Brown on YouTube, and Antonio Moore, he has Tone Talks, TONETALKS, on YouTube as well, and they do a lot of talking around politics and events that's going on, and explaining things like the racial wealth gap and different things around politics, and they do a good job. And like I said, that's who put me on to this whole thing about the wealth gap, because I was always pretty much in tune in politics, but I didn't have an understanding of the wealth aspect of it. And when they showed that to me, it's just like something clicked, and it's just like, oh, okay, this explains everything that's going on. When you put the two together, it's just like, oh, and I was like,
Mm.
okay, I get it now.
Mhm.
And that does, and it will send you down a rabbit hole, because you have to start looking at some of the old
Mhm.
laws and policies and stuff that were put in place, and then you'll start to realize, like, oh, like our people really were literally held back. and until you actually start reading this stuff and seeing it in books and stuff from the past, you won't believe it because you'll start in your mind. You'll be like, okay, that's just making an excuse, and that's what we've been propagandized to believe that all we do is make excuses. That's why we can't get ahead. And it's so much propaganda out here that um, it's almost like deprogramming yourself.
Yeah, that's
It's
real.
it's a lot of deprogramming that I had to do because there was a lot of things that I used to believe, and then it's like, okay, I'm looking at the data and I'm looking at the facts, and now I understand that that's not true. And when you come to that realization, it just makes you look at things at a whole different light, and then it makes you even appreciate um, the people that came before you that made these big sacrifices um, for the betterment of the group and not being selfish and just doing things for themselves because they didn't have to do it. So I mean, I know a lot of people always say they get tired of hearing people talk about Martin Luther King or or any of the civil rights leaders that came out of that time frame that were real popular, Malcolm X or anybody else. But when you look at the sacrifices that they made for the community, and you realize that they didn't have to do it, but they did it for us and the future generations, it, it gives you a whole new appreciation of what they stood on. So um, I know I can go on for hours,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. And
but
I
I'm
feel you
yeah.
on that, man.
Mhm.
And but like he said, man, check those people out. Like I say, you're doing a good work, man. Just letting people know, making people aware, because we need to have that knowledge. So you appreciate it, man. Love the insight you brought, and
Yep.
continue to do what Christ is leading you to do. Hey,
Thank you.
this is episode 105. Hope everybody stay blessed.
All right. Thank you.